What's happening, people? Welcome to United View. And this is an update on the latest developments of what's been happening in the world of football and obviously in the world with the passing of Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. Obviously, really sad news for the nation and the world, really, yesterday, which shocked all of us before the Europa League game yesterday. I know Owen sort of spoke about it on the show yesterday when we were live, and we didn't know what was going to happen, and now we do. So there is an official statement from the Premier League. We just wanted to kind of just use this as a time to inform you guys of what's going on, talk about it a little bit. There's been a lot since this statement was made by the Premier League of some conversing opinions about how or what was the best way to show respect to Her Majesty the Queen. And we're going to do a little bit of that in this show. So let's just go straight into it, and let's just stick with the facts for now. Owen, Premier League statement. What is it
Yes.
they had to say? What's going on?
So there was a meeting around 11 a.m. this morning. We knew this was going to happen coming out of yesterday's events. We knew there was going to be a meeting. Heading into the meeting, it must be said there was some government guidance that essentially said that they weren't going to enforce any mandates saying you had to cancel all sport. They were going to leave it to the appropriate governing bodies, i.e. the FA and the Premier League and any other sporting bodies to make their decisions if they wanted to postpone or cancel games on a case-by-case basis. So the Premier League did have a meeting at 11 a.m., as I mentioned. And they then released the following statement saying, quote, "At a meeting this morning, Premier League clubs paid tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II to honour her extraordinary life and contribution to the nation. And as a mark of respect, this weekend's Premier League match round will be postponed, including Monday evening's game." Richard Masters, Premier League Chief Executive, said, quote, "We and our clubs would like to pay tribute to Her Majesty's long and unwavering service to our country. As our longest-serving monarch, she has been an inspiration and leaves behind an incredible legacy following a life of dedication. This is a tremendously sad time, not just for the nation, but also for the millions of people around the world who admired her, and we join together with all those in mourning her passing. This is aligned with the approach that the FA and EFL will take with their competitions this weekend. Further updates regarding Premier League fixtures during the period of mourning will be provided in due course." So essentially what we know as confirmed this weekend is that this weekend's round of Premier League fixtures have been postponed. As far as going forward, next weekend, we don't know anything confirmed about that. There has been some speculation, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a bit. But as of today, all fixtures this weekend have been postponed.
Yeah, they have, and I think we can talk a little bit about that. I think when it was quite early, which is why you got to kind of wait, let things transpire, see how the country is going to deal with this, see what the timeline is. And actually, at the time of recording this, we still don't have the actual, on this day, this is going to happen. On this day, the funeral is going to be from that time to this time. We still don't have that yet. But there's a general consensus that I think that the funeral will be next weekend, which puts next week's games in jeopardy as well, which we'll talk about. But let's just talk about quickly whether it was the correct decision to postpone the games this week. And at the beginning, I'm not going to lie, I thought I think it's probably the right thing to postpone it, was my initial thoughts, my initial feelings. But then I started to kind of just look at different things going on and different opinions and different ways forward, and start to just take a step back and think, what other ways could this be done? And what kind of changed my thinking was the loose kind of terminology from the government guidelines. When the government guidelines were saying basically that, look, there is no obligation for anything or any establishments to stop doing anything. But in the name of sporting events, what they also gave guidelines on what they could do if the events happened, i.e. black armbands, i.e. national anthems, and minute silence and stuff like that, which then I thought, you know what? That's not that forceful from the government, So they're leaving that, up to interpretation and up to discretion of how we want to do it. And when I think of football and I think of what West Ham did last night as well, it can be a poignant moment to celebrate the Queen. The Premier League is broadcast to millions of homes around the world, not just the UK, around the world mainly. And I do know the Queen, liked her sport and stuff like that. So that could have been equally as a respectful way, even arguably more powerful way to, show respect to the Queen and stuff like that. Of course, there's things that are logistically better, or things that help the Premier League in terms of, okay, there's a World Cup, there's fixture congestion and stuff like that. To me personally, somebody's passed away, and it's not just somebody, it's the Queen. It's Her Majesty the Queen who's died. So in terms of making it easy for the fixtures, I refrain from that. I more talk about what's a way to mark her life and celebrate her life and show respect. And I do think that these games could have gone on. If I just move it on a little bit before I get your piece on that, Owen, just to add a bit more context. Since that statement from the Premier League, we look at cricket, and the ECB have made a statement saying that cricket will resume on Saturday to pay tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and honour her remarkable life and service. Now, there is more to this, but even if you just go off that first line, they're saying it will resume to actually pay tribute, to honour her remarkable life and service, following the cancellation of Friday's cricket fixture as a mark of respect upon announcement of her death. The England and Wales Cricket Board can confirm that play will resume from Saturday, including international, domestic and recreational fixtures. The decision has been taken after consultation with DCMS and in line with official national mourning guidance. And just off that, it is a little bit different because today they had a pause as a respect, because cricket's a bit of a different game. You can pause it. It was rained off on Thursday. So they just thought, okay, we'll have our day of kind of mourning today. And then we'll get back to it tomorrow. And also, but then they are still saying they're still using it as a way to celebrate the Queen, to show respect to the Queen, to honor the Queen. So there's a little bit of context there, but I think it's proved that, sporting events can go on, not in vain, not in that shouldn't be happening. That's for sure. And rugby is the same as well. The Premiership Rugby Super League is going ahead on Friday, and Huddersfield versus Salford will be played on Saturday. So Premier League Rugby here in England will be going ahead as well. So Owen, what's your thoughts on the whole situation of whether it should have been postponed or not? You're muted.
Sorry, there you go. Sorry, I agree with what you're saying there. Initially, like you, my reaction was a little bit, I can't almost see how they can go ahead. I mean, we saw how it was covered last night. For instance, I was watching the game, doing the match on BT Sport, and they didn't have any analysis, didn't have any punditry, didn't have any adverts. They just cut to black and then cut to the game. And I thought, well, if that's a sign of how things are going to be sort of operated, then chances are it'll be called off. And the noises we were hearing late last night was that it was almost a certainty that it was going to be called off. And then in the hours that passed, it did feel like maybe the public perception was, well, maybe it can go ahead. And as you mentioned, it can be turned into a tribute, a celebration of life, if you will. And there are other aspects that go into it as well. Of course, football games, as opposed to maybe cricket games, or I know the golf's been postponed today, but it's going to be going ahead over the weekend. There's a larger security police presence at football matches than other matches. And we're not talking about just one cricket game. We are here, we're talking about 10 Premier League games over the course of a weekend. So when it comes to, again, security measures, that becomes slightly more difficult with police that are deployed to London or to Scotland or to wherever in the aftermath of the Queen's passing. Does that make things difficult logistically? Could they have gone ahead? I think they probably could have, in all honesty. And maybe it is a safe decision by those that have made it, by the Premier League. Maybe they thought, let's go with the safe option, and maybe the more politically safe option. I don't know. Now, as we're recording this now, again, we don't have any confirmation as to what's going to happen next week, but it is being reported, I believe, by the Telegraph, Ben Rumsby from the Telegraph, that there are major concerns about football fixtures potentially not taking place next weekend, either due to, as I mentioned, when it comes to the police presence, the likelihood of police being redeployed en masse to London ahead of the Queen's funeral. That could be a problem there. So we could be looking at a situation where it's not just this week, it's also next week. And I think, again, that goes back to this weekend, where you could say, well, let's say the chances are they are going to be called off next weekend because of the lack of police availability and being moved en masse and the proximity to the Queen's funeral. Maybe this weekend actually would have been the best time to have matches to pay tribute and celebrate the life of the Queen. So I'm not really sure there's a right answer, honestly, Flex, is there? I mean, it is a difficult one. Could they have gone ahead? Probably. Could it have been done well and properly, that there would have been a fitting tribute? I think so. And there might have been these scenes of, you know, patriotism and celebration of playing the national anthem,
There definitely would have
celebrating
been that.
life.
Yeah.
You know, there could have been
West
all
Ham
of
showed
that.
it last night. There
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
could have been that.
And there could have been that, and it could have been something really special. Ultimately, the Premier League have decided to go in the direction they have. And as you mentioned, I don't really lean too much into fixture congestion, this, that, and the other, because I don't really think it's that appropriate, honestly, to talk about, you know, when are these games going to get played and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's logistics for the Premier League and the FA to figure out. What you do have to focus on at the moment is that it's the passing of a revered figure, not just over here in the UK, but around the world. And you have to celebrate the life of Her Majesty in that sense. But you know, it is a difficult one. It is a difficult one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do lean towards maybe the games could have been played and could have been done correctly. And maybe it was the Premier League and the FA erring on the side of caution and expecting that other sporting events would follow suit. And it hasn't happened.
I think, you know, with the Premier League as well, I'm not going to lie. When my opinion, when it was quite raw and early, was, oh, they're definitely going to have, like, this was like last night when we knew the news, and obviously we was in the press box yesterday. We didn't, by half time, we still didn't know if there was going to be a press conference after the game. The club came and told us. They sent me a message sort of halfway through the second half to say, due to what's happened, there won't be. And I think once Arsenal didn't do one as well in UEFA League, the Europa League as well, in their game didn't do a presser, it became apparent that that was going to be the theme. And at that point, I was like, it felt like it was going to be unanimous. Everything just stops. But then I was thinking, you know what the Premier League can be like. You know, sometimes in COVID, when it was, you know, it's not safe. Should we do it? Should we not? It was a bit, you know, you wouldn't always trust the Premier League to make the right choice. And they've kind of not, I'm not saying they've made the wrong choice, but they've now made a choice that doesn't seem to be that popular. The general consensus on social media after this has been announced, especially when you get the ECB and the Super League of rugby and golf kind of carrying on. I know they're different sports, but when they give the reasons, especially the ECB one, when they're saying we're not just carrying on because we kind of respected and mourned on Friday, we're carrying on because it's a way of honoring her. It's a way of celebrating her life. You know, that's an important part of that statement. You just think, could the Premier League have done it the other way around? Have they made the wrong decision? But I do think it's going to upset people either way. You know, sometimes there is no, you know, unanimous thing. But when I look at the EFL, Watford, all games in the Championship, they're not playing tomorrow, but they're playing Tuesday night. So it's back to normal after that. Is that the equivalent of saying, okay, like the cricket did, we do one day of mourning or one fixture or one sit-in, one day, one round of whatever. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then the next available one, because football doesn't really work like that, we'll do it. What is interesting is what will happen for Europa League, because obviously we've got Europa League away against Sheriff, and I know they've moved that stadium, you know, for location, different location in Moldova, I think it is, because of, you know, size and different threats going on over there. They border Ukraine. There's a lot of obviously political stuff going on there, and this is something that affects other countries now. If that match doesn't get fulfilled, does, you know, it's I'm not going to get into, is it their queen? How much do they, you know, feel about this situation? But what would be the implications if that game didn't get played? It's a different country. It's a different competition. I got a feeling Manchester United might play in that. But then you look at fast forwarding again to the Sunday, which would be Leeds. If the funeral is going to be on that day, which again, at the time of recording, we don't know. You look at the resources, and, you know, I've been reading reports that they would need police from Manchester, Liverpool, and all over the country to come down and help facilitate that. And also camera crews. You know, people don't understand sometimes how it works. You know, camera crews and stuff like that don't just work for Sky. You know, Sky will basically like sub in, like they get contractors, subcontractors in,
freelance cameramen,
freelance cameramen to come and work live for the games. But a lot of those are going to be pulled in as well to broadcast this state funeral around the world. So there's that side of it as well. So I think it was more feasible for the games to go on this week than next week. next week's almost like a definite won't happen for me.
That's
Just
what I
out of
mean. It would
sheer
have been
resources.
this would have been the weekend, arguably, to do the tribute, because next
Yeah.
weekend feels even less likely. And especially talk
Mm.
about games like, say, Manchester United versus Leeds. What does that require? Big police
A
presence.
lot of policing.
A big
Yeah.
police presence, and that's just not going to be available next weekend. So, and ultimately, it's a pretty unprecedented situation. She's been the Queen for 70 years. And I don't think anyone truly knows what is the right and wrong decisions to be making right now. Obviously, there have been plans in place for a long period of time, but those plans might have been made 20, 30, possibly 40 years ago, right? And even that, does it really translate to today in 2022? And with everything that goes on around it in terms of not just sport, but society, right? Other events, what happens with everything else, it is difficult. It's very difficult. And I think, like you said, possibly it does feel like at the time of recording that this weekend might have been more feasible than next weekend, but we haven't had a confirmation on for that. And as you mentioned, it's not just weekend games as well. There's midweek games in different competitions. So how does that get affected? Ultimately, we're all quite blind in this one to try and know what is going to happen, because we're still waiting on confirmation from other sporting bodies. I mean, we talked about, the ECB, we talked about golf, we talked about, I think there's an F1 race this weekend as well that I believe is going ahead. Their position on it might change in the next 3 or 4 days as well, with the government guidelines that come out in the next couple of days as well. So that's ultimately the situation right now. Is what we know confirmed is this weekend it's not happening. As it goes to next week or in midweek or next weekend, we still don't know.
Yeah, no, we don't. So that's your latest, guys. In terms of here at the channel, we're gonna wait to see what sort of guidelines come out, and just go from there. Really, we'll see. Probably back end of the weekend, we should start making decisions and seeing what to do there. We just want to make sure we do the right thing. But at the same time, I do think the Queen's life should be celebrated, and she was from what I'm reading and what I see as well, became like a modern day queen and completely understands things in society that make people happy and wanted these things to carry on, like sport. Queen was always at the races and things like that. Loved their sport. So that's why, yeah, to finish off, I do kind of feel that in hindsight, I think these games should have probably carried on. It would have been so poignant to see, every Premier League ground at the beginning of the match, God Save the Queen, or the King now, being sung, national anthem being sung, with a minute's silence as well, potentially. Players in black armbands, broadcast around the world. I think the Queen would have loved that, but it wasn't to be, and that's the decision that's been made. And we will see you guys soon as we get more on this, as we get more information about what's going to happen midweek for Europa League, and as we get more stuff on what's happening as well. And obviously, there will be Manchester United content coming in the near future, but I don't think it's right to be on here right now just acting like everything's normal. I think it was important that we talk about this and inform you guys. So we'll see you all again soon, guys. Peace. Take care.